So again, Mikko, you will continue a little bit from where you were yesterday, but maybe go a little bit deeper on your thoughts on fact-checking, media literacy, and how to deal with disinformation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you. This is a luxury option because you can kind of test the audience and have a feedback. We spent time in Faktabaari yesterday and going through with colleagues some issues and I was wondering like how can I hopefully help Swedish efforts, and because you have to have some sort of an fact-checking initiative running in this country sooner or later. So what could we contribute from our experience, having heard the Fakti story? That is, I think, at least in Finland, the reference that I'm pushing, and next to the technical side is that there was a very good presentation, and you have Martin here who can tell so much about the efforts from that side. But something we have tried to bring from Faktabaari to the fact-checking community pretty much since the beginning is the kind of link to the media literacy. As Christoph said, I think yesterday, it's like the fact-checking is a kind of media literacy for the adults. But what we have been most worried is still the youngsters, because the let's say the stranger the digital world gets, and we had a very good presentation on that one, and then a little bit of publicity, not my book, I never could do that, but if you have a chance to look at Shoshana Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, that's a kind of a very interesting book, at least the one, the part I started, and it explains the challenges we are facing and all that. So it needs a very holistic thing. Yes, my background is in fact-checking media literacy, actually in government services at the time, and nowadays in the university. But what the real eye-opening thing was the EU high-level group on online disinformation, where there was practically all the stakeholders, not really the advertisers at that time. Now they've been included for thinking for a kind of multidisciplinary thing, multidisciplinary approach to tackling disinformation. But if I can offer you something, it's probably the efforts we have been doing in the media literacy, both with let's say classical methods with the teachers in the school, trying to empower the teachers to go further, and all that, and then nowadays lately also for the kind of what we call internet literacy, if we have time, because I think the people need to kind of know about the digital environment they are living in order to kind of incentivize the systems that could work, and the media innovations that could do things differently. But so you will be able to find actually pretty much the presentation in the one blog that I will present you later. But now that we are in Sweden and you have wonderful resources to kind of and a very interesting case study called Greta Thunberg, that I think in this room everybody knows very well, and I think much of the approach that we came and promising approach was like we were practically fact-checking Greta, and this all kind of started with the schools, because we were trying to kind of give the fact-checking method, the different materials that we are doing to the schools, and working with the teachers. And we have one pilot school, all ages, so to say, and they are very interested on the approach. And then like, what do you want to do with it? And what are the themes that people are interested in, and all that. And environment was for obvious reasons at least one in Finland, and I could imagine it's an empowering thing in Sweden as well. But then at the same time, then we had this climate strike movement starting and all that, and we were like, wow, that's a really powerful message and all that, and people were going for their new hero and all that. But even the heroes need to be fact-checked, so to say. And then it turned out actually to be quite an interesting case, because we cannot fact check Greta's activism, but we can fact check the science base that she's leaning her argument. And at least probably anecdotally, we were able to do that of her speech she gave in the European Committee of the Regions in Brussels, in the presence of people like Juncker here, and kind of annoying. You know her style. She's giving hard time for all of us, but basically she has her activism part, that, and then she has the kind of the science part. And I mean, the thing that we could do with the fact checking is to go for the science part. And basically, what we did, we gave made a kind of a speech, put it down, and just tried to identify the 4 science-based claims. I'm not going to repeat them all. You can find it here. And we gave these to 2 independent IPCC level scientists to kind of check that, you know, what do you think? What do you think about that one? Can you say that? Is this does she has her facts right, so to say? And to be especially to my relief, that was the case. I mean, there was a little bit on the one of the arguments, the kind of, you know, as a scientist, I wouldn't be able to say that, because the scientists are by definition very conservative on that one, also very slow sometimes to come with that type of things. But apparently she has been able to popularize the science very well, because practically the two scientists gave her green light, and we ended up basically then a positive fact check called Greta Thunberg has done her science homework. And this was this was interesting also, because as we heard that the fact checks might not have too much of an impact, but at least this went viral thanks to possibly some people in Greta's, let's say, bubble. But also it inspired at least our international fact-checking community, and this was, let's say, shortlisted as one of the 4, let's say, most influential fact checks of the ongoing year, basically, when we met in South Africa. And so there has to be something right. It's far from perfect, but I think this type of things that really empower, and if they are timely coming, so they give the kind of legitimacy to in this case her, to kind of that you got your facts right, go and argument your case, go engage with the debate, and this is what we've been doing. There is another blog that I'm going to now summarize called 5 Lessons from Greta has done her science homework, that you can find also on our website. But basically that is something that then when we have been testing it in the schools, so that has been able to not just start a debate on what is fact-checking, but also the kind of what are the responsibilities of different type of actors, what can be fact-checked, what is misinformation, what is disinformation, what is malinformation, the famous information disorder, and at least you are being able to, or the teachers say that they've been able to talk with something that the youngsters, the teenagers can kind of relate to. Later we plan also to kind of go for other tactics on that one. So I think that really the lesson number 1 was that you have to go for all kinds of parties for fact checking. I mean, of course, this is evident in fact checking. I mean, normally in Faktabaari, we fact check the claims just coming from the audience, and then we put it a bit in relation to how much it's been demanded, or is it doesn't have a significance, and all that type of things. But in this edu project of ours, I mean, finally we made the choice because we saw that this fact check has a potential to make the case of something, not just fact check an individual case. It has a bit more of a longevity of it as such. So that was the kind of approach we could say that let's try to make with our small resources run by the Transparency NGO, so something that really lasts and tells a story while doing the fact check. Then what we really think went right was that this was kind of an engaging debate. It was engaging, or it was empowering debate. It was empowering the critical thinking, because it started all that, you know, many levels of the discussion also around Greta, as far as I understand. In Sweden, she is also targeted for all kinds of disinformation, I suppose, and in US it's pretty massive, as far as I understood. Then it was very interesting that this was able to kind of link, so to say, to communities. So basically the kind of youngsters and then the scientists, because at the parallel, at least in Germany, I know that the Scientists for Future is a really strong movement, and they live, and in the social media as well, they're kind of going with their hashtag, and so we just, you know, let's say tweet, we link the two. So and basically, as Greta's case, to my understanding, is pretty much like, don't believe in us, but listen to the scientists. And so something has to happen from there on, because they might have the solutions. Greta is like ringing the alarm bell, and so that was very good. What was really important, what we learned from this one, was that the fact checkers are not the pedagogues, and not necessarily the journalists neither, but and actually that the teachers don't know too much about, yes, journalism, journalism principles, I mean the ethical codes. You have to be very vocal on that one, because that's what distincts, let's say, journalists and fact checkers, because it's kind of methodological approach. I think fact checking might be even easier in a way, because it's a kind of a it's kind of the source literacy and going to the sources type of things, and you don't need to be a writer to do that, and some of the fact checks are not extremely interesting, but the journalist can make them alive. Then what we learned in this specific case, it was really supportive to have a video of that one, so you could really extract it, and with the skills you could do so much more of that one. But so you could send it and you could make it kind of influencing, and people can see it, because that's how at least my teenagers are using the media. They're using it with this one, and they're using it with the practically images and videos, and sometimes audio. Audio, I think, has a lot of potential. And finally, then what we didn't succeed, but we are planning to do that, and it's also to kind of measure then the impact of the individual fact checks, and so that does they really reach the audience, or just do they go in the bubbles. We have some evidence that this was at least spreading a bit, but it was really anecdotal. I mean, we didn't pay Facebook or Twitter or Google a penny on that one, so I mean, it really needed the organic, let's say, distribution and people sharing it. But this was an issue that people could relate to. And in some, basically, it kind of was able to bring the different kinds of communities together for an, let's say, and linking actually the two most let's say perhaps the two most difficult problems of our time, the kind of the physical world, the climate crisis, and then this kind of a big confusion that we are to some extent living with the change in the media sector. And so that is pretty much what I had on Greta case and what we learned. Then going practically further, we made then this was still related to the European parliamentary elections, because remember that this was a big topic actually on the European Parliament elections, to some people's surprise as well. And as far as I understand, this individual, I mean, once again, the Greta as far as I understand, it was together with the Macron, one of the few people that really made the kind of a trans-European, let's say, impact, that people were talking about Thunberg's and Macron's ideas, not just in the national bubbles and in the national languages. I remember to having seen some sort of a Twitter study that I unfortunately cannot now find the reference, but take it as with a disclaimer. So, but basically that outside all the Spitzenkandidat and all that, it is practically these type of two people that were really going around, in a way, people really interesting, and also these two persons then receiving enormous amounts of disinformation. I mean, in a way, with a reason, because that's a very disturbing message for somebody who wants to keep things as they are, or confuse the debate, because both are going with the, let's say, brave ideas, to say the least. Anyway, we thought that this was during the election time, but then what should we do then after the election time? We plan to continue with the thematics here, but then we went for I think there is a blog in English on that one, what we kind of labeled as an internet literacy. And my colleague, who is a teacher, was actually there in Göteborg. There was a MIL conference and talking about the digital self-defense skills. I mean, retrospectively, yeah, there is a little bit of risk to talk a very kind of warsome vocabulary, and there are many approaches to that. But basically, the idea is that teachers should be trained to deal with the information disorders, and they should have a updated set of tools and methods at their disposal. And all this, the kind of same type of interaction they could really reach, and they are the big potential. So why this is then practically running, and why the Finland might be a little bit on the reference in this one, not that this is actually happening in the massive scale yet, but at least the government officials, and after the big consultations, a la Suédoise, so to say, kind of listening everything, so they came to a kind of a curricular reform 2016, where this kind of critical thinking skills and the multiliteracy was really, let's say, not just like a good to have, but basically integrated into the curricula. And of course, this created then the demand for all kinds of approaches. And there, as far as I understand, Sweden is not there, at least at the time yet. But I think if you are doing it at some stage, so then you could have something that kind of relate to, because then the teachers are coming really to the materials and all that. So what can we do? And I don't know the Swedish situation, but there is a potential, because then you are really taking the debate on information disorders to the classrooms. And to my understanding, this is pretty much the only safe environment where you have a physical contact and you can talk about these issues. Outside that, yes, we have in Nordic countries wonderful library institutions and all that, but then people are pretty much on their own. I mean, nobody's going to preach to men at my age, as far as I understand, are the most difficult to convince if they have decided something, freak out and fact checking or something else. But I mean, but the youngsters really need to understand a lot of these type of things, and I think they're the journalists and the technology people have a lot to give to that one. And if you are going to hopefully make a Swedish way of fact checking initiative or something like that, so my let's say 5 cents would be to integrate it with some sort of an internet literacy arm or something that you could kind of really make it alive and use the probably the best resilience that the Nordic Nordic countries still have, and I think that's on this information in age, and it's like to keep the people more into their senses and keeping calm and being part of the solution rather than the just spreading things like what has happened in many polarized societies. So I think I could leave it practically pretty much here, and if there is any questions or something, you know, the Greta case even better from in the Swedish context, but whatever.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I had a question when you talk about media literacy and internet literacy. From the examples that you presented, could you...
The Greta case.
Yes.
Yep.
Is it mostly about teaching how the internet works, how information is spread?
Yeah.
Or is it also about how information affects us, whether we read it or whether we see images, as the role of the multimodal communication in the internet, where you not only have text, but you have images, you have sound and texts and a lot of different modes, and not only that they work differently, but they work together.
Yep.
Are you approaching these things as well, or how do you work?
We are trying to kind of build. It's not an easy thing, and it's of course you should kind of with our small resources we have been trying to kind of identify what are the critical age where it, for example, comes in the curricula in the university. So who are the responsible teachers? Is it civics or mother tongue or I mean, practically the approach can be used in many fields, but I mean, you have to start somewhere with the scarce resources, and what would be the right thing? Actually, reading this kind of freaky stuff in a way that's really scary. So I mean, it's like what are people supposed to know without not feeling, let's say, too helpless in a way also. I mean, so there's a responsibility going on there as well. We don't have the solutions. We are like a kind of trying to come up with some sort of simple things like, you know, like your internet is not the same as my internet. I mean, it's completely different based on the micro-targeting that is happening, and what you are using and what kind of browsers and Facebooks you got there and what I'm using. So we don't see the same reality. We don't have the common space. So it's this kind of let's say, things that should happen, I think. And then actually, at least with the youngsters, I mean, they are, let's say, very home there, but at least they have to kind of start thinking and then going for the sources and trying to understand more and trying to be curious. That's the virtue of the journalist, like trying to find something, and then the teachers probably could, let's say, help them towards the right direction in a way. And I think that is coming, but we haven't identified. I was wondering, is it, if you go to Faktabaari and click the edu, so all the blogs should be there, but there is a kind of list that we were wondering that at least like these, was it 10 elements that could be included, and but what to say, what's the message, and all that. So this needs more work and understanding. The whole problem with this one is that, I mean, as a fact checker and the information page and all that, like nobody knows exactly how things are happening. So with a high level hat on top of it was like the urge was just that let the researcher access to the data and whatever they need, because that needs accountability. And I mean, that's even in the interest of the platforms to that somebody, or I could imagine that somebody would be able to say that they are really doing what they claim to do, because at the moment nobody really is able to do that. So fact base, work on that one, but start with the youngsters as well. If you have them resources, go for the 40+ men as well. So I mean, feel free, but I mean, we are stubborn, so to say, and that needs a different approach. But I think the scaling model is still in there in the school level.
In political communication, some researchers say that what they call citizen literacy is declining, and one reason to that is the media itself and journalism itself, because we are not doing what we should do anymore, as well as we should do. Do you see the need of some sort of contemporary or postmodern citizen literacy that could consist of internet literacy, as you spoke, and also about media literacy? So we, a little older people than our youngsters, could ourselves better than until now decide what's fake news, what should you trust in. We could, if we know more about society and have a more broader understanding of society than we have today, maybe we could do this ourselves, and we don't need to rely on you fact checkers at all.
Exactly. I think it's of course, I mean, I need to talk in the European Parliament, and everybody is of course in the blame game that let's go now for Facebook and Google and let's just rush them and all that. But I was saying that, you know, first of all, you have to also show that you can deliver, let's say, results and make people, so to say, believe that this makes sense and all that. So, and if you create then this kind of sense of belonging, so people have something to defend, and we are now talking actually on the democracy itself, very much so. And yes, there are actors who see a wonderful opportunity to kind of play down that one, and it's not actually very difficult, and that's the scary part of it. But I mean, yes, you have to kind of create the belonging. I think that was said in the presentations this morning, and so that's probably the narrative things. And if the narrative is then the value-based stuff and all that, so be it, even for fact checkers. That's not the, so to say, fact checking as such, but I think that's the first step, and then the literacies, all literacies help. Everything helps. That is not just like a algorithm-based sinking into the, let's say, the space that you start believing is the reality, and that creates, of course, the extreme problems. And we, as far as I understand, it was the evidence there showed as well that it's actually pretty small percent of people that are still the very problematic ones, but they can make a lot of mess with the tools available there. But the most of the people are just like, and then it's the hate speech, let's say, part, like very easily are let's say silenced by, you know, that's scary and I don't want to be part of it, and there is evidence in Finland that it has influence already. There was a government study, I don't quote it now wrongly, but basically the idea was that it has led to the situation that people don't want to engage with the social medias. So perhaps we need a kind of new Facebooks or something that you could have a proper debate and argumented debate and do it in somehow using the best sides of it. We had a project on that one, a debate bar, that was kind of the, when the facts are not enough, so then it turns out to a debate. But yeah, that would need a kind of a proper technical solutions for that.